Deputy President Paul Mashatile has pleaded with farmers to stay in the country. This follows a group of white Afrikaans farmers who have been accepted in the U.S. under a refugee program. Mashatile was visiting one of the biggest agricultural exhibitions in Africa, the Nampo Harvest Day in Botterville in the Free State.
So we'll continue to talk to the farmers so that we understand one another and what we want to do.
Guys, so I just woke up this morning and I stumbled on news that actually says that Vice President Paul Mashatile is pleading with farmers in South Africa not to leave South Africa for the US with this refugee program going on right now. And also, he is also urging Afrikaners who actually are planning to leave South Africa for the US not to leave, pleading with them to stay. Now, my question is, did this request had to wait for action from Donald Trump or from the US before this kind of narrative would start coming from the ANC? And this is why I created this channel. The comments in the last 2 days alone, bro, I think I couldn't even sleep properly thinking about, you know, the images that the comments on this channel by farmers in South Africa going through. I'm even a little bit scared to watch the documentaries that actually have been proposed or sent to me to watch on YouTube, but I'll watch them tonight and tomorrow. This weekend, I'm going to be consuming all those documentaries to really understand the basis for these farm murders. I know they stem from a really bitter history and maybe an attempt at revenge, but the comments here on this few videos I've put on this channel about Afrikaners leaving the US and all that, I don't know if these were really voiced out continuously all these years and the president or the vice president or the ANC hasn't really done much to, you know, kind of like, even in the words of Kali Creel argues that they've tried to speak to the president and probably the government a lot of times, but they've been constantly met with silence and neglect. And so that's one of the reasons he had to kind of like push for external, you know, kind of like support or external view, an external party to come to their aid. And it has actually come to this, to the point now where the vice president is pleading with the farmers not to leave South Africa. It's almost like a light bulb moment, all right? And so I was visiting Sweden at some point, I think last week or 2 weeks ago, when I actually was invited to a football match by some of my colleagues in that regard. And we were watching this football match. I was really stunned about how football is in Sweden. And so I thought probably if there were any South Africans in Sweden I could meet at some point, we could just meet. Although I didn't get any kind of like positive responses yet. But then there's this guy here on this on this channel. His comment makes me laugh a lot. His name is Tammy Ntombela, all right? And I think he's a guy who is filled with so much hate for Nigerians and so much hate for white South Africans, all right? So I asked that, you know, I would like to meet South Africans in Sweden, and his comment goes like this: why South Africans? Because you are a Nigerian. And then somebody replies him, and then he goes off totally and says, this Nigerian guy has obsession for white South African politics, whereas Nigeria is burning. Worse, he only promotes parties that are led by Caucasians, which are 5% to the detriment of all parties which represent the majority, which are black. Typical African singing for the stomach. If he is good, let him analyze Nigeria or all the countries in Africa. Then he goes on to say, after further reply, he says, I'm not stupid. Continue with your paid analysis from white monopoly capital. But as part of the majority, we see you. So, I don't know, this Tammy, I think you just told me that you are an EFF person without saying that you're an EFF person. But nonetheless, anyway, And there are two other comments I would just like to speak to because they teach me a lot about, the reality of what's really going on in South Africa. It seems to me that, the many blacks in South Africa have still not come to the realization that the white in South Africa could actually be South African. It hasn't really sunk in yet. And I think this is what I'm really reading from this guy's comment here. But the whole narrative about why a Nigerian should be analyzing South Africa's history, is actually another issue I wish to just really try to address and talk about because, I'm a historian, African historian, really passionate about African history. And to realize how little we know about the history of, the whites in South Africa is something that many times strikes me, how many black South Africans, I'm really not interested in that. But it's cumulative in what we would call African history. And I'm passionate about it. I love reading about it. I love to understand more about my continent because when you speak about Africa, you speak about Kwazemy because Africa is at the core of what my being represents, all right? Now, in Africa, we have Asian Africans, we have white Africans, we have, Indian Africans, as we see in South Africa. South Africa even gives that multicultural touch to what it is that an African represents, all right? So there was this other really interesting comment I got from this guy. I think his name is Rodney Hassan or Rodney Hassan anyway. I don't know. The name speaks of both an English, it almost feels as though it's both English and Asian at the same time. So he says, Kwazemy, may I ask you a question? Which South African goes to Nigeria to involve himself in your people's historical past and destiny? These are South Africans now. He says, you will never understand how complex is South African history. I urge you to step aside and rather learn. I saw you make many mistakes on your podcast with good intentions. Watch young Sama Sambit's podcast this morning, where the DP Mashatile visits the farms and begs them not to leave South Africa. Our icon Mandela said, if the ANC does the same to us as the apartheid regime did to us, we must give the ANC a dose of the same medicine. Please, I advise you to step aside regardless of your well-meaning intentions. This is my country, which I love very much and come from a mixed race and family. I love both black and white. His second comment then goes like this. He says, Kwazemy, now this is a command. He says, Kwazemy, I still repeat, and ask you to step aside because your content and comments are sometimes not bipartisan, but partisan. White farmers are special because they are the machinery that feeds the nation and play a vital role in the GDP of this country. We downplay their genocide to our detriment. Please, I implore you to step aside. Your attempt in being part of the solution doesn't resonate with me. I'm being honest with you, brother. So that's the comment from Rodney Hassan. And he says that my attempt at being part of the solution doesn't resonate with him. And I don't know why, Rodney, you would think that I might be interested in maybe what might resonate with you. Because for me, what I do on Kwazemy is that I speak about people. I see people not racially, but as potential, as people who are part of our humanity. So that's one thing that I would just like to clear about, especially these two comments, you see, because people do not understand that probably my passion for speaking about, especially on this channel, speaking about more minorities, is that I see a lot of channels speaking a lot about the majority in South Africa, right? I like to choose the road less traveled. And to pick on the minority, for me, gives me a deeper understanding of the society in South Africa. I usually say I'm not a nationalist. I see myself as a continentalist. When you speak of Africa, you speak of Kwazemy. That's me. Now, to really ask, what it is that a Nigerian finds passionate about South Africa's history would be, in a way, dictatorial. It's kind of like a dictatorship, so to speak, because I'm even about to launch a study on South African history as an academic pursuit. I don't have to be South African to study South African history. There are many of my colleagues who are non-Nigerian but studying Nigeria's history or Nigeria's politics or a part of Nigeria, so to speak, all right? There's no boundaries around that nationality that says you must be South African to speak about South African history. I don't think that works. My PhD, I studied Ghana's history, and many times I realized that after I defended my thesis, I was able to speak to Ghanaians about many things they didn't know about their country. So if you're patient, you might be able to learn a few or more from my understanding of South Africa's history, even though you might think I'm not attached to that. Because at the end of the day, what we are doing is we are trying to ensure that there's justice on the continent. In Biafra, for example, I'm sure maybe many of you do not know, but I'm also naturally Igbo. And, I remember during the Biafran struggle for independence, there were I think a few South African mercenaries who actually felt the weight of the burden of what those guys were fighting for and actually came to Biafra to fight. Now, would you say, or probably, I don't know if maybe the argument might be that they were hired, all right? They are business people. They are the typical Africans that fight for their belly, just like as Tammy says that I'm a typical African fighting for my belly and I'm being paid by white monopoly capital. So, but I think that at the end of the day, we have to really come to a conclusion that what is wrong, all right? So for the VP to now step up today to plead with the farmers not to leave South Africa, and I saw some pictures of him visiting some of the, areas where some of these farmers were buried and all of that to show homage, so to speak, finally, because this is something I think I was listening to, that was the DA spokesperson who was speaking about how he would like that maybe one day Malema should follow him to condemn a farm attack and also visit some of the cemeteries, so to speak, where these people are buried to really show solidarity. And he also wouldn't mind to also go to some of these places where blacks are also being attacked and buried. And let's start to build that platform for peace, all right? So Mashatile was doing that yesterday. I think this was a conference that was organized. And this is what I would have expected as a leader a long time ago, not just now, because of the fact that the whole thing with Afrikaners is all over the place, causing a lot of racial rift, even in the US. But I would actually have thought that this whole thing would have been controlled long ago before it escalates now. And I don't want to use pity, but I really feel a little bit, I don't know if scared is the word, but the visit next week by President Ramaphosa to Trump, I'm really feeling that there might be another Zelensky moment that would really bring the world into a whole new kind of debate on the thing about African leadership. These are the kind of things that we shouldn't be allowing get out of the world, get out into the world to portray Africa. Trump already thinks Africa is a shithole, all right? And to have President Ramaphosa, especially with Trump really full of data. Bro, I'm telling you, the data that Trump has, I don't think we even know the scale of what he knows about South Africa, especially about these farm mothers. The details that Trump has is scary. I can already hear and feel it from the analysis I hear from most of his cabinet members and many Americans analyzing this. The details that Donald Trump has about these farm mothers, to come to this conclusion to the detriment of the leftist Americans who are really angry that he's redefining the definition of what it means to be a refugee in the United States. It's something that before Trump would get to that position to make such a decision, just know that he actually has some things he's holding on to. Even though many people think that, it might be propaganda to call these Afrikaners to be experiencing a genocide and all of that. But with the comments on these last videos I've made on this channel, people have their fathers-in-law shot. One actually says that the father-in-law is actually still paralyzed. He doesn't even know if he's in this world. All right. Many people had, I saw somebody, in fact, it's just not even, I'm not even able to speak about, some people were stabbed with spears. Some people had their intestines pulled out of them from their, So my question now to the likes of this kind of Tammy, who thinks that I'm sympathetic to the Afrikaner farmers or the Afrikaners in their move or their quest to move to the US, would this action now eventually by Vice President Mashatile, I think it would anger this kind of person, this Tammy Ntombela, if I'm getting his pronunciation of the word correctly, because he would really be angry that Vice President Mashatile actually now is pleading with these white farmers not to leave South Africa. He would really be angry that there's an attempt to find a unity in South Africa. He would really be angry if probably the farmers in South Africa find safety in South Africa because of the fact that they are white. All right, forgetting that these people are human beings like you and me. If you are Christian, you would know that there was a time, I think it was David or so, who was really sad about the vengeance, that there were lots of issues going on around the land, and one of the reasons was the fact that the blood that had been slaughtered of innocent people actually was kind of like a reason, and so he had to go and take the life of some people to balance. So people do not understand that killing innocent people destroys the functioning of society in ways we are not able to understand. And the likes of this Tammy Ntombela doesn't understand that the enemy we are fighting, the enemy, even the National Party during the time of the apartheid also did not understand. They were limited in their thinking, all right, and perpetrated this deep hatred now in the blacks, that the blacks are really finding it difficult to forgive. But we do not understand that the real enemy is not you and me. It's not the people we are seeing. There's a force behind that actually constantly wants humanity to be plunged into this darkness. And the more we feed that darkness, the more we feed that revenge and all of that, the more humanity keeps getting darker and darker, and more deaths and more murders and more of this kind of issues, racial tensions all over the place, destroying the world. And so what I would advise some of the critics on my channel here who are angry that I am black, but sympathetic for the white Afrikaners who actually are murdered on their farms, my message to you is this. I will never be part of a group, a racial group, that would hate another racial group to the point where I would want to see them dead. It won't happen with Kwazemy. No, not Kwazemy. No, it might be some other black, but not Kwazemy. Because this speaks also to the history. Many black South Africans think that you are the only ones who harbor pain. There are many Igbos today. If you know about the Biafra War of 1967, now this is black on black war, all right, that still harbor the pain of the loss of their families from the 1970s, thereabout. 67 to 70 was the time of the Biafra War. There were pogroms that were, carried out on the Igbos. It was actually even called today a genocide, an attempted genocide of the Igbos, where I think almost 1 million Igbos lost their lives. They were killed, in the northern part of Nigeria. Why? Because a nationalist who loved Nigeria so much, his name was Captain Kaduna Nzogu. He loved Nigeria so much, but he was from the Igbo extraction. He carried out a coup because he saw that the country was going in a direction that wouldn't lead to a sustainable path for the country. But the victims of that coup were from another tribe, the Hausa tribe. Now, the Hausa military men, because of some issues, maybe I'll do a documentary about that so that you guys understand the character of pain and how it is that it's important that we let go of past hurts and build together. So these Hausas who had their leader executed by a nationalist who was from the Igbo extraction decided to revenge, and the victims of their revenge now became many Igbos because they thought that this was an attempt by the Igbos to do an ethnic cleansing. And that's how Nigeria has been plunged since the 1970s up to today, where the Igbos and the Hausas and even the Yorubas actually find it difficult to trust each other and all of that, all right? And so there's always a temptation for every Igbo you see to hate the Yoruba or the Hausa because of this history. But the smart ones, the likes of the juggernauts, you know, in Nigerian history, Nigerian business spaces, the likes of the owner of the manager, CEO of UBA, United Bank of Nigeria, United Bank of Africa, Tony Elumelu, the likes of Aliko Dangote, and many other juggernauts, they've come to realize that if you dwell on that kind of hate, you wouldn't move forward. Aliko now is the richest, or one of the richest blacks, you know, in Africa. Elumelu, I don't know if, I think there's a UBA bank in South Africa. I don't know if you guys see, but he's Nigerian as well. Many Nigerians in real estate. If you visit Lagos, the new part of Lagos, many Igbos own properties, own businesses. So if there was that dependent on that history, you know, many people wouldn't move forward. The Igbos, after the war, were given $20 to begin their life. They had lost all of their property. Just like now, they had to flee from the northern part of Nigeria, just like the Afrikaners are fleeing to the USA. And they were given $20 to start their lives. But many of them have gone on to build industries from that start because they were able to see the importance of moving forward. All right. But in South Africa, what I'm beginning to see is that there are many blacks and there are many people who allow this hate keep them from moving forward. And at the end of the day, it turns into a kind of paralysis. You keep asking yourself, what's the point? You're consumed by the hate every day. Even this Tammy now is angry that I, as a Nigerian in Sweden, is asking to meet South Africans because he can't understand why a Nigerian should be meeting South Africans. So you need so much love, bro. I really wish I could just hug you if I see you. I've invited him for some jollof rice if he comes to meet me in Nigeria, and we'll sit and talk. I think a lot of black South Africans just need some real good love to really understand the power of what it is to build, to move forward from the pain, from hurt, from past, to learn to forgive. Otherwise, you will be paralyzed. You will be like in Nigeria, there's a word in it says that, you know, bad character is like a flat tire. No matter what you do, it wouldn't move forward. I think hate and lack of forgiveness in the heart is like that flat tire. No matter what it is that you do, every morning when you wake up, you are not able to move forward. And at the end of the day, you know, who knows, maybe this Tammy might end up in Sasa for a long time to come. And if these farmers or these taxpayers who are living for the US end up living totally, I don't know if you understand, Tammy, that Sasa is being sustained by taxpayers and probably loans coming from other parts of the world, all right? So if all of this whole issue goes, we're losing taxpayers from South Africa and all that, do you know that it will be difficult to even sustain SASA payments to many of the black poor who have struggled to have education for thereabout and all of that? And you are killing the possibilities of building a long-term kind of like potential to develop these people because of this hate in your heart. So it's unfortunate for this kind of people, but I know that you need a lot of love. And to the leadership. I would actually appreciate Vice President Mashatile for this effort, all right? Although Sama Sambit, who I interviewed on this channel, who this Rodney Hassan might not know that I've interviewed Sama Sambit. Sama Sambit is my good friend. Probably when I visit South Africa, we will meet face-to-face on this channel. You'll be with us. You guys will watch us on our trip. My very good friend. We speak a lot. And, you know, you do not know my stance for South Africa. I see a South Africa that is beyond race. I see a country full of potential. I've worked with white people a lot. Do you know who white people are? White people, I've never really seen, you know, a people who are really obsessed with perfectionism and excellence. All right. And this thing with time is something that you don't joke with. Probably in the Scandinavia, which I have a lot of experience. Time, punctuality is an art. You have a meeting at 10. These guys are there at 9:45, walking around the area so that at 10, they are in the room. It's crazy. Do you know who, you know, the Asians, the Indians are? The Indians living with you there. Indians are leading the world. At least most of the tech companies in the US have their CEOs as Indians. All right. Indians are technical gurus. These guys are passionate about, you know, IT, tech, and all of that. So you don't mess around with this kind of talent when God now somehow puts them in one nation and makes that nation Africa. And then you are not able to see that there's something stopping South Africa from becoming the best country in the world. I think, you know, if you're not able to see that, you're really limited. But anyway, this is just a few words I have for these comments. And I really hope that the government, the leadership in South Africa would wake up and smell the coffee and do all that it can to protect especially people who are really being killed in South Africa because of the fact that they are farmers, or because of the fact that they are white, or because of the fact that probably they retained some wealth from the apartheid time, and at the end of the day, because of that anger, they have to be killed. If you hate them, you don't necessarily have to kill them. That's me. That's my view. I mean, like, why should they be killed? There are other ways to have wealth transferred. And part of that is hard work and dedication. Although the likes of Paddy Lehotla speaks about the fact that there's a vertical concentration of this white monopoly capital, which this Tabby speaks about, and that to have that concentration transferred to other parts of the other races is really difficult. But at the end of the day, this is history. This is how history works. This is how the past works, all right? I think it would now be smart for the blacks, the Indians, and the coloreds to somehow just work. You know, you don't have to compete. These guys, they might have all the wealth and all the land. Is the role of the government to put policies that would now find a way to redistribute. Some of them, BEE, for example, a major critique of BEE is that it's only enriching a few black elite. All right, BEE is not bad in itself, but the argument now has been that it's enriching just a few black elite. We still have a lot of poor people getting more and more poor. So there has to be a kind of like adjustment of that policy, so to speak. And I don't know, but I think hate is not the way. Anger is not the way. Farm mothers would not solve this issue. And now that they will be living in droves. I don't know if probably it's just unfortunate, but I'll just leave it there. I will see you guys in the next video. Next video I have to Hans Roth speaks about the possibility of South Africa becoming another Zimbabwe. He's trying to weigh those indices. He's trying to defend South Africa as being, you know, not necessarily going down the line of Zimbabwe, but there are certain things that would need to be done to prevent that. And I also have another video from another US journalist, Laura, who speaks about how the US needs these Afrikaners because they fit into the proper definition of what it is to be a refugee. So I'll see you in the next video, guys. But share your thoughts. What do you think about this video? Paul Mashatile pleading with the Afrikaners and other with the farmers in South Africa and other Afrikaners not to leave for the US, and also these comments around this guy Rodney Hassan and Tabby Tombella. Share your thoughts in the comments.